So we can use the time tunnels and time continuums to like go to past lives or memories of future lives and maybe life on other.
Yes, but not just not just past lives and things like that. Time continuums can simply be that you're going to be taken to ancient Egypt. They may have nothing to do with your own past life. It can be you're going to go to a certain time continuum where you need to see something, or you need to see something play out on a different time continuum, how it would have been had an event altered. Doesn't have to be your own past life. It can be things that are related to the history of the world or religious history of the world, related to prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics. Can be related to other worlds, extraterrestrial worlds. So it can be related to any number of things.
So you brought up extraterrestrials, and we kind of started out today talking about the expanded mind. In your experience, maybe we've touched upon this before, but have you gone to other life forms in which you inhabited as a past life or future life? And how many people do you know, like from your own experience, that have had experiences on other planets as maybe different life forms?
Well, I have, and my own guesstimate is that many people have had other experiences. As to how many people do I know who are exhibiting obvious signs of that, I don't know that many. I do know of a few, and they're not necessarily like my closest friends. They're colleagues and things who have worked with me on this very subject. But, and that would mean that they have integrated somehow from those existences. But my understanding, and from what I've experienced, and even from the writings of other mystics, not just my own experiences, it would be reasonable to assume that it's not an uncommon experience for many of us to have had other existences in other worlds or in other places, in other realms too. This isn't the only purgatory world, so it doesn't even have to be extraterrestrial. It can be something that is just another purgatorial type existence. There's all sorts of ways that these kinds of things can come to pass.
So as far as the mechanics of out-of-body travel, we kind of like just fell into this chapter.
Yep. Which is kind of cool, because in a lot of respects, that's how it happens for some people. They just fall into this, Yeah.
Or fall out of the body. So
Yeah.
what would you have to say about the mechanics of out-of-body travel?
Well, I think the main things that people are going to focus on in the very beginning are, the process, which is going into the deeper states of consciousness, the vibrational state, entering into the unconditional love of God, entering into the mysterious mind of God, and then actually separating from their body by either rolling out, willing out, or some other way, and then learning how to navigate, in other words, how to move around, see, hear, smell, touch, and taste in the spirit world, how to move through windows, doors, and walls. And then you're learning how to do your basic, how do I get around in the astral plane? And then once you're out through there, then you're going to start moving towards the beginning stages of out-of-body travel, where you may spend some time on the astral plane learning some things, but then you may move forward into some other realm travel, and at some point then the initiations into the mysteries.
And so you have this as chapter 1 in your book, after you talk about, prior to that, the nature of reality and the relationship between mysticism and science. So obviously it's very important to the initiate that, you know, we're speaking of out-of-body travel in the very first chapter. So
Right.
for the initiate, just coming to this, what is a good way for them to dip their toe into this? I know that when I worked with the International Academy of Consciousness for a while, and I was reading every single book I could on the subject, a lot of, that was weird.
What?
All of a sudden you went, "Brrr," like,
Oh, really?
there a little computer glitch. Right. A lot of it had to do with energy and kind of preparing our energy to be prepared to start to move out of the body, and so that's kind of like how we even started this whole initiation into the mysteries, was talking about getting out of the cordoned off limited sensory awareness that we have to be initiated into our much greater self.
Yeah.
And what is there, and what's the potential of that for us. So dipping the toe in, what would you say, like just right off the bat, hey, initiate, this is chapter 1, even though it's like 11 hours into our, you know, talk. But it's great that it is that way, actually, because then there's a whole setup to it. But why is it, you know, so very important to the initiate? And then how can they just take step 1 right now that can help them?
Well, you know, you're talking about the process of preparing your energy and stuff. Another important process that I have found, and you know, I was told years ago in when I was writing The Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out-of-body travel and mysticism, and I also wrote Come to Wisdom's Door, that those books would have a certain energetic component that would help people to have the experience. And part of what I think would be helpful is, first of all, read The Hammer of Mysticism, an encyclopedic journey into out-of-body travel, mystical processes, and terms. And so you'll understand even more so because it goes into much more detail. But also consider reading The Mysteries of the Redemption and Come to Wisdom's Door, because what it's going to do is it actually makes the experiences possible in your mind. And what happens with that, it's like if you didn't know that we had a West Coast, you know, then you kind of have to start with, oh, it's possible to reach the West Coast, you know, like pre-Sacagawea, you know what I mean? And so what we're doing by doing this is you're putting into your spirit the reality that this is energetically possible. And what often happens with people who start reading it, it just automatically just starts happening because you are becoming familiar with the landscape, the map of the other worlds. And so you are less uncomfortable and you become more familiar, not as uncomfortable with the idea of going there. And so we see that. That is definitely a preparatory step. Sometimes people miss the most simplest of steps like this, which is, okay, just do things that make your mind, body, and spirit aware. We can do this also by reading mystical theology texts to begin that purification process by starting to do that work of purification in the physical realm, whether you're experiencing anything spiritually yet or not. And that actually energizes that to happen. You want to integrate the prayer, the meditation, and the spiritual reading. Talk about that a lot in my books. Prayer, speaking to God, meditation, listening to God. You want to give sometimes up to 3 hours of meditation time where you are allowing your spirit and your consciousness to go to a level deep enough where you may be able to start approaching that vibrational state. sometimes people think, oh, I'll just give it 10 minutes. I'll give it 15 minutes. That's generally not going to be enough. That'll be something, but it's you want to actually look at this as a real practice. It's a real thing, and it requires some time and effort, and generally you need to give it about 3 hours so that you give enough time for that to happen. So those are a good way to start there and get your feet wet.
Yeah.
And take your time. Don't feel pressured by it, or you have to zip through anything. Take it at your own pace, you know.
I mean, you're the founder of the Out of Body Travel Foundation. You've had 30,000 out of body experiences.
Well, that's a random number that you know, I think you pulled out of the sky, but I've had a lot of them. Yeah, but yeah,
well,
somewhere.
I saw that somewhere, that in your, you know, work somewhere. You like documented like 30,000 or something. So
I don't think I actually wrote that anywhere, but someone might have said that about me. I know that it said I've had thousands of experiences, but I mean, I haven't counted them. So just so everyone knows, when they read that, I haven't counted them. I don't know how many, but there are a lot.
You've had 29,840 experiences, and we're gonna hold and I'm gonna do some research and make sure that's true. I mean,
I guess we're gonna have to start counting, you know.
And so, you know, you've been down this road, and you're an extraordinarily humble individual who's I mean, in my experience, and quite selfless in your counseling. That's where I started out with you. Of course, I was already about 20 books in. I do the auto with you before I, you know, talk to you for the first time. And so my thing was, I loved the Audible books, and I would listen to them at night because I was away from home half the time in a hotel. So I just had the luxury where I could listen to them all night long. Or what I would even do is just turn it on when I get back to the hotel room and just have it at a low volume in the background, because I know that the subconscious picks up everything. You know,
yes.
Nothing escapes it. So I would just kind of have it there. But when she says, come to wisdom's door, as being the author of the book and putting that book out, one might think like, well, okay, so that could be a little, you know, this or that. I'll say from my own experience that I realized quickly there was many things I was doing that was inhibiting my opportunity to have out-of-body travel experiences by reading that book.
And it's a very quick read. It's not a lengthy.
It's a quick one. For me, it was a quick listen.
Yeah, quick listen.
I love Audible. I've read, you know, many of your books too, but Audible books are my, you know, I think I'm like 40 or 50 in, something like that.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, and all of them are available on Audible, so that's good.
So dive into it because you're going to learn things that there's, you know, you're just not going to consciously be aware of, and it's going to help you. I feel it's helped me anyways on my journey. So back in the day, I used to have a real strong connection to, you know, science and their metaphysical slant and all the people that were involved in it, and, you know, but I've just gone into other areas, so I don't have the same neural pathways that are connected at this moment that I once did.
Yeah.
But you know, like we all go through phases sometimes of like learning different things, right?
Yeah, I do relate to that. I do that all the time because I'm a dork. Remember, we're dorks. We do that.
Yeah, I can't forget that.
That's what dorks do. Come on. It's part of the job description.
Part of the job. But you're a dork. That's my job.
We understand our function.
Yeah, we know who we are. We know who we are. So I mean, you know, with this, we can you know, I guess we can just jump in really, because I'm not going to get too crazy. I made some notes. They're going to be, I like to ask like energetically open questions about anyways. So, you know, I'm sure that.
Yeah, and you had said that we were going to go like on the on these mysteries and things.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you just need me to go through them, and it's like, for we are what we emanate, this is the first mystery. For we, it'd be a little more interesting than that. But,
Yeah.
we
This
can do
is the first mystery.
that.
Mystery number one.
For to attain.
You could be like Jodie Foster and Nell, and just do that. We're talking about the relationship between science and mysticism. So this is the beginning of your book, and so I know
Yeah.
your dad was a scientist.
Yes, he was. He's a mathematician.
And could you
He
talk
was-
a little bit about the relationship you had with him and how he also guided you, ironically, as a scientist, mystically?
Well, during our lives, he wasn't real involved in our lives. He was kind of a dork. So he was a different kind of guy. So we didn't have a real close relationship with him. But when I was instructed to do this book, The Hammer of Mysticism, he came to me and guided me on a lot of things to start this path out. He was a mathematician, and he was part of the beginnings of rocket science. Some of his work is still at the United States Air Force Museum at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He helped with one of the rockets that was there. I don't know if it's still there, but I think it is. And he was also worked on one of the Apollo missions, but he was also very involved in the development of radar technology and the beginnings of artificial intelligence. And so he was a very interesting, brilliant man, and but very not that functional with his personal relationships. But when he came to me in mystically, he was very excited about this whole thing of bringing this together. And Dr. Rudy Schild and some others from the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Existences had contacted me to be a member of their board, and I was on that for a couple of years. And the Hammer of Mysticism was actually born of a project that we were doing together at the time. So we were trying to merge all the modalities of consciousness with some of the things that were coming through in science. And I remember that Dr. Schild had shared with me a couple of things, and you'll see if you go to the website at outofbodytravel.org, you can download an article we wrote together on the science of moral law. He had talked about how quantum science and astrophysics, he was a Harvard professor emeritus at Harvard, and he said that it was showing that what the mystics had been saying for the last 5,000 years was being proven scientifically, and that everything in the universe was pushing for physical manifestation, pushing forward for that. And it's harder for me to understand the scientific things because I'm the mystic, But he explained this, and then he also told me, which you'll read in that article that I mentioned, how everything that they were seeing showed that the universe actually operated by a complex moral law. And so everything was working towards physical manifestation. It seemed like it was very important that everything from consciousness and energy to come all the way out to physical manifestation in order to complete itself. And the things that we take for granted in mysticism, like the unitive consciousness, the experience of the one, the experiences of ecstasy, samadhi. Dr. Edgar Mitchell himself had become fascinated by this during his life, because when he was in space, because he was an astronaut on one of the Apollo missions, he experienced a profound samadhi in space. And so he wanted to understand what would cause that to happen in space, what he knew to happen to the mystics from throughout the ages on Earth. And so he ended up spending a lot of the rest of his life studying that stuff. He founded the Institute of Noetic Studies. He did a lot of work in the psychic research fields, and he did a lot of work in the US and in the USSR at the time, in the psychic experimentation fields and all the things that were going on in the early 70s and early 80s. And so, yes, there is a lot that unites science and mysticism now. And we want to make people aware of that, because these parallels are showing us that there is a connection between the importance of our physical manifestation and our spiritual experience.
And one thing you brought up in this chapter too, because you were just talking about moral law, is your father came to you and said there's only two forces in physics.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
positive and the negative.
Yes.
But also in Da Vinci's notebooks, remember, on the duh?
Yep.
The duh notebooks. So he also expressed the very same thing, that there was a particular moral law for him to even access all of this information that he was bringing down.
Yes.
And he said the same thing, a positive and negative. And so the more, positive, so to speak, that he was, the more stuff he was able to bring in.
Yes. And ironically, you're bringing up Leonardo's notebooks, and in some of the experiences that I had with my father at the time, he had been pointing out to me Leonardo's notebooks and also the writings of Tesla. And, my studies have focused mostly around the ancient sacred texts. And so he took me through a little crash course in some of the more scientific writings. And, like I said, that's not something I understand as well, because my general calling is mysticism. But it was fascinating to see the intersections that are being forged between the fields.
Between the law of mysticism and the law of physics.
Yeah,
They come together in many ways.
yeah.
So you talked about physical matter and science, and then spiritual matter and science. Can you address that a little bit more?
Well, in what context did I talk about that?
Well, I mean, that's one of those limitations too, that, if we're talking about physics, it's like it's right in the word, like physical physics. And then, there's spiritual matter, and then spiritual matter is really like, that's where it originates. And then it, comes down and hits the ground afterwards. So there's a limitation where a mystic can go into there's a whole other science that's available really when it comes to spiritual matter.
Well, yeah. And what, I'm not sure if this is what you're referring to, but you know, physical matter vibrates at a lower vibration than spiritual matter. And so, but I'm not finding it in my document as to specifically what you're referring to.
It's really like kind of more of a statement anyways, probably.
Okay.
You would agree
Okay.
with that, that wording?
Well, word it again so I can make sure.
Well, I mean, we're just talking about physical matter and science.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about physics. And then, if we are talking about spiritual matter, I mean, they did do like the slit, experiment, the one, the famous one where they shot.
I'm not familiar with the slit experiment, so you tell us.
Well, they shot all these atoms like through this slit, and then some were waves and some were particles. But just from like the fact that people were observing it,
Uh-huh.
it changed physical
Right. It changed
reality.
the outcome.
It's,
Yes. Yes.
thoughts, spiritual. So also, like, we can say prayer is very spiritual, and there's all these experiments that have been done through prayer. Lynn McTaggart and the intention
Yeah.
experiment, where we can change physical reality. We can change physics
That's true. Yeah.
with spiritual matter.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
we can like go directly to spiritual matter and just switch up people's physical, outcomes of scientific experiments.
Well, what they were able to see was that they would get one outcome if no one was watching. But then when people started watching, it would change the outcome of the experiments. And so they were able to prove that thought impacted their own, experiments, the physics experiments. And then, of course, taking it to a even higher degree, that it could impact the movement of the atoms and the things that they were shooting out into the slit.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, we're going to be going into the fragrance of mysticism,
Mm-hmm.
fragrance of the mystical rose, I mean. And because, I think that this is a place for initiates where they can really just get on YouTube and start playing around. If they even just type in science versus mysticism, a whole
Yeah.
slew of things will come up. The conference that you just did at the conference for consciousness and human evolution, like Nassim Harriman was there, and he really gets into the marriage between mysticism and science, as does Greg Braden. He was also there, and he gets into that in a very real way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When we talk about, are you ready to get into the fragrance?
Well, sure.
Okay. Well, let's just see if there's a couple more things I want to hit real quick.
Okay. And then when you're ready to hit the fragrance, I'll just zip over there and grab the book so I have it with me.
Okay.
And
So,
I'll pull it up here too so I can look things up.
well, you mentioned in this chapter about the quantum field and the holographic model of science.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that you want to talk a little bit about?
Oh, well, yeah, it was both talked about in the holographic model and in the field, which was written by Lynn McTaggart, which is, the latest in science on, or, it's been in the last, I think, 10, 20 years, these theories have been emerging, and they've been showing quite a bit of fascinating stuff about it, which ironically shows a lot of the things that we experience in the spiritual realm, which kind of the way that it's laid out, the way it's mapped out in the holographic fields, the fields. And,
Because mystics for thousands of years have been accessing this quantum holographic field and altering reality
yeah,
for thousands of years.
right. Yeah, and it's something that for mystics, it's something we're taught, and it becomes very I don't know, what's the word for that? It's
Ubiquitous.
sure. I don't know. I was thinking it's like what is, it's spontaneous action. It's something that we do without thinking anymore. It's something, it's a natural action in the spirit world. But the science community has found this discovery to be pretty revolutionary in regards to how it really shows that reality might be very different from what we have previously perceived it to be. And so, if the universe is a hologram, now, then what we are uncovering, I think in science, what they might interpret this to mean is that then everything is illusory. But in reality, it just means there's all of these emanations. We're going back to the emanations. And so these worlds, in Buddhism, if you read like the flower ornament scripture, have you ever taken a look at that one?
No.
It's the Mahayana text, the Avatamsaka Sutra. Goes in quite a bit of detail about the many Buddha lands beyond this world. And I feel like it's it's my favorite Buddhist, sacred text, because it describes these lands very much in the way that you experience them mystically. So where, we might see as mystics, there are some Christian type mystics or visions that we can relate to in terms of what heaven might look like. But there's also, this text really just lays out in literally hundreds and thousands of worlds, and in the text it's hundreds and millions of kotis, and and so this text really captures the essence of emanations. Emanations of worlds.
Emanations of worlds. Because scientists today will often speak about realms. And they talk about creative force that penetrates our universe. And, even like a subcutaneous energy that everything is affected throughout. And that's where the mystics will go too, and can affect reality from this place. But they also there's some science that goes on to say that electromagnetic fields and ethereal substances that permeate all the universe can be affected in such a way that where it affects gross matter. So they're getting into this, they're getting into other realms. They're not just here in the physical. They see that what affects this reality comes from somewhere else, and it's all connected.
Right, exactly. And this is exactly what we see in the mystical realms. This is what we see in the initiations into the mysteries. This is what we experience as mystics. And so I guess, what happens is, as the mystic, we're reading this and we're like, yeah, that's Yeah, that's how it works.